Welcome to the From My Experience podcast, where I have frank and open-hearted conversations with people sharing their embodied journeys and lived experiences, particularly within a South African context. Okay, so welcome, Janaki Ashira, to the From
Thank you,
My Experience
Tony.
podcast.
I'm so excited to be with you.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. Firstly, do you like to be called Janaki? I know you also go by Christy. What's your sort of preferred? How do you like to be
I
referred?
don't mind. I think most people know me as Janaki, but equally as many people know me as Christy. So as you please.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I obviously met you. I really met you with the red tent. Like I don't think I had done any yoga stuff with you prior to red tent. I think red tent was the first time that I became aware of, firstly, conscious menstrual cycling, that there was something called the red tent book, women's circles, that there was even such a thing as coming together and being in women's circles and actually sharing wisdom. I think it might have actually been the first time I've ever really even conceptualized like women's wisdom, especially me not being a mom, not having any kids, like never really going through that, sort of natural, process of having a child and then understanding that now you're kind of looking after something else and there's some wisdom in that, or getting wisdom from mothers or sisters or other people in order to like manage your life. So for me, it was hugely revelationary. Was the first time I actually tracked my cycle, was the first time I actually looked at how my moods were, where my energy was, what I was, whether I should actually be using this cycle in order to like manage my life and work with some kind of flow. It was also, it was prior to COVID, and but it was like heading towards, it was just before COVID, I think, a year or so.
2018. Yeah,
Okay,
2018 was when 2018 was when I ran the first red tent facilitator training, and you were in that.
Yeah, yeah.
And but the circle started in the tail end of 2015, October 2015, and then they really ramped up in 2016.
Okay,
So,
sure. I didn't
so
realize that long ago.
you think you were in, like we connected as far back as that, and then things took a turn when we became facilitators and that really went into it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I must
Yeah.
say, when I first, well, maybe you can maybe you can start by explaining to listeners who maybe don't know what I'm talking about, like what the red tent and or menstrual, living within cyclic flow, or and then with what you're doing now. Maybe you could
Okay.
explain better than me.
Okay. So I love that you've alluded quite a lot here in your intro to women's wisdom. More than anything else, you've used that word quite a lot. So I'll be present with that as I because there's so many different angles to approach this, right? But the red tent is born of this idea that there's a sacred space that's created for women to honor themselves. They spend 28 days honoring their families, and the idea of taking 2 or 3 days to be honored by your family for all the work that you do is this ancient idea when women lived in communities back in sort of biblical times, and so the revival of the red tent as a modern thing is just to bring awareness to women to create that time and space for themselves. So we get that you're not taking 2 or 3 days off a month for yourself, but I think we kind of have that in mind as a long-term vision, that the world will be structured where women can take time out for themselves so that they're not so depleted all the time. And coming together in a red tent is just a space that holds that honoring of what makes us women, that we bleed, that we have a womb, and even if we don't have a womb, you know, there's still this sacred energy of creation around the idea of a woman and her bleed and her womb. And so the red tent is just a space where we can come and be present with that at its core, and then from there this rosebud sort of blossoms out, and it goes, as you say, women's wisdom. It goes in many different directions. So, for example, you know, people might be having problems at home, in their marriages, and they might be having problems in satisfaction with life in general for themselves. And maybe somebody's going through something really traumatic, that's womb-based abortion or miscarriage or something, and there's no place in society for women to come and connect on this level. So sure, you've got your group of girlfriends and you can talk about your problems and feel comforted, and then you're topped up for a couple of days. But when you speak of women's wisdom, it doesn't usually go to this depth of being held, just being witnessed, being seen, in this immense grief or immense difficulty that you're navigating, or in honoring yourself as a flippin' powerful woman. Maybe you put down every single day in your life, by your partner even, or by your colleagues, and you just forget who you are. You forget how amazing you are. I mean, you are a channel of creation. Like, it doesn't get much more amazing for that. So than that. So I think it's a really special space for women to come together and be witnessed and revered in that. It's not a space where, you know, you'll talk and I'll talk and you'll talk and I'll talk. It's where you literally will be held in a womb, you know, and gestated and grown. So you know, coming into awareness of you were speaking into the cyclical flow. So coming into awareness of the flow of things, a lot of time women can come into a premenstrual period and be very agitated when they're surrounded by their family, and it's just that PMS comes, and it's this time of complete agitation and frustration. I don't want anyone near me, you know, and we think that there's something wrong with us, but there isn't. This is just because PMS provide me space, because you need space, and there is no space in this modern day living for a modern day woman. So it's this woman's physical reaction to her surroundings and her craving for her own space. And you know, when we're living in awareness of flow, awareness of our flow, then we're able to know, okay, this was my trigger warning that I need to start creating myself space. Then you don't take that need for release, because that's what your body's doing, right? You're releasing, you're physically releasing. You don't take that need for physical release out on someone next to you. You can rather just take accountability for yourself and just say, I need some space. I'm going to be just keeping myself to myself. If you guys can help out with things just for the next couple of days, you know, just reclaiming that little bit of sense of self. And the more we do that month after month after month, we eventually step into, you know, this is my time, this is my space, and here we are now living the red tent. And so I think that's the power of cyclical flow. You were saying how it's impacting the work I'm doing currently. So currently what I'm doing is cyclical awareness for business. I guided through by the Red School, working with cyclical business. And it's one thing to know that, you know, when I ovulate, I'm going to have more energy, so I'll be more productive. And when I am in my autumn, I'm more sensitive, my inner critic, is really loud, and so I can take things very personally, and I can also speak large amounts of truth. And then, you know, when I'm coming into my bleed, I just really need to cocoon, and so I'm not going to plan a lot of projects. I mean, on one level, that's really amazing that we know how to manage our business and our lives in a functional way that honors our cycle, you know. So I don't plan to do too much during this phase, and I don't, you know. So what I'm finding though is that it's not, what we're not paying attention to is the transition between the phases. It's the way that you transition from your summer to your autumn that makes the difference to how you experience honoring yourself in your autumn. Because you can imagine, you can never go from summer to autumn. You can never go from, woo, I'm on my high horse, I'm making all these plans and I'm pumping out all these things, and you know, look at me, everything's going so well, to I need to cocoon. Like, it doesn't happen like that. It's the transition from the one phase to the other phase. And you know, my background in all of this work comes from birth, pregnancy and birth for 10 years. So when I say that out loud, I hear, you know, the transition phase of labor. It's just, it's the most crucial phase, because that's the phase right before the baby comes. There's the transition phase. Everyone who's a medical professional in the birthing room celebrates the transition phase, but we're all preaching about how good it is to be in tune with these phases. Yes, level 1, know your PMS. Level 2, know what you're capable of in each. But it goes much deeper than this when we are trying to create a way of operating in business that's not patriarchal. Everyone's out there bashing patriarchy, but what is it? I don't want to say the opposite, because we don't want to go from one extreme to the other, but what is a feminine solution? What is an alternative? That's the word. What is an alternative solution? How do we do business honoring cyclical flow, honoring ourselves and the depths of those transitions that we go through every month, in a way that I can meet my students and myself at a level that I'm truly capable of, you know? And what I'm seeing is that to navigate that space, we are the same as Red Tent. We must do it together. Women need to meet each other together on that level, like mycelium network, you know. And so when I know where you're at and you know where I'm at, we can work together in such harmony. Nobody needs to be triggered by someone else, because we know, okay, she's in her autumn, she's like super sensitive, so don't take it personally. Or, you know, I'm in my winter, I don't have energy, you're in your summer, can you maybe carry some of this load for me? And we support each other in this beautiful, beautiful network. And it requires constant accountability. So we're now working in a Red Tent, cyclical wear business. So that's where things are taking me now. And these are levels of women's wisdom, this theme, this word that you've brought to me today, that are not commonly known, right? So wouldn't it be amazing if in corporate spaces there was an alternative way to work? CEOs and execs were running their businesses, these big corporates, from that space of cyclical awareness, so that they don't burn out, so that their teams can all carry each other's loads. Very passionate about this right now.
I can see that. But let's take a little step back. I mean, I know where you're going with all of that, and I think that's amazing, especially since I guess women, we do tend to work better in community, right? That is the feminine thing, to come much more into like how we work with one another. But if we step it back just a little bit, like because there might also be people, I know how I was when I first became aware of Red Tent and cyclical flow. I never even thought of seasons, you know, summer, spring, winter, autumn. I didn't understand that. I didn't understand the maiden mother crone. All of that stuff was very new to me. And I'd never really seen or looked at my life in that way, or my cycle in that way. And when I started doing and coming to regular red tents, I started to really start understanding and seeing that flow. And so understanding the difference between the menstrual cycle, the stages within the menstrual cycle, how they relate to, well, the seasons. So we're using spring, summer, autumn, winter to describe, because there's a quality also to those seasons, which is what you're experiencing through that cycle. So maybe you could do a quick, brief explanation of that: spring, summer, winter, autumn, winter, and how it relates to the ovulation or the menstrual cycle.
Sure. So I definitely won't explain like the scientific bit, but as much as I can, I will, since I work so much energetically with these things.
Yeah, people can go and look that up online. There's lots more resources
The
online.
woman, she's doing amazing stuff. She goes into that. So there's your summer will be when you are in your ovulation. And so you've got these ripe ovaries, and they are full of magnetism and attraction and vibrance, because they're looking to be seeded by life. And then you have your autumn, which will be the period just before your cycle starts. And so what you start to go into after ovulation is you now start to go into this phase called the luteal phase. And they call it in the red school, what do they call it? The via negativa. So it's when you start to really go within, and you might start to contemplate and be with yourself and be with the heaviness and the sadness and all these sort of things that we need to purge. That's, we're symbolic of a snake. We shed a layer of skin every month.
That's
and then
the PMS-ish time generally.
Yeah, that's the PMS, the autumn.
Yeah.
Sensitive, heightened sensitivity, and deep truth in that sensitivity. And PMS, yes. So then further into that, you now come to your winter, and the winter will be where the actual bleed is. The lining is really shedding from the womb. We really are clearing out. And from the winter, we will then go into our spring. And the spring is when the lining of the womb starts to slowly rebuild itself, because it's been shed in our winter. And now the lining of the womb starts to slowly rebuild, and the hormones slowly come into what feels a bit more of homeostasis, bit of balance. And so we're still tender, we're still very vulnerable from all that depth that we've experienced, especially if we're conscious of it. If you're not conscious of it and you go into the spring where we've got this beautiful balance of hormones again, you can just be absolutely shattered, because you charged from your summer into your next spring, and you just whipped through those heavy periods, not paying attention to the autumn, not paying attention to the winter. Then you get to the spring and you're actually burnt out, and you don't want to be. You want to honor these. So spring is like, oh, nice, I'm coming around like a young lady, I'm blossoming a little bit. And then, so this is the via positiva, where the energy is positive again and heightened, and then you're back in your summer, which is that perky, full-on vibrance again.
Perfect. Yeah. And the interesting thing is, as you talk about it again, now I've just I'm coming to the end of a cold, sinus cold, whatever it is, but it's actually been exactly in that. It's actually followed that cyclical phase. In other words, when I was in the winter and I was, shedding, was in the depths of in the depths of my cycle, the cycle of which I am now also having perimenopausal. So like cycles aren't that often, but even without a regular bleed, I'm still going through those cycles. And And so there is still that dip. And of course, in that dip tends to be when I get a little bit more ill, or, I'm really struggling. And like you say, if it's a really hard time and I'm not aware of what I'm going through, then when I come into that spring space, I feel like, geez, like I still don't have any energy, and I'm supposed to be like coming out of things, and yet I've got nothing to draw on. And it's interesting how, like, it took me a long time. It took me, I think, like you'd always said when we started doing the red tent, that it takes like a gestation period, like that 9 months of birthing a baby or growing a baby to birth, is the same period that it takes for you to really like to understand your flow. And it was very, very, very much like that for me. And I still have to be reminding myself that actually, where am I in my flow? Am I working against my flow? Am I with the flow? Am I using the flow to actually help me work through things, as opposed to that like constant like feeling drained? I refer back to how you were saying, especially in business and in a sort of very patriarchal type of world, again, not to bash the patriarchy, but because there's been a very strong drive, that masculine drive towards things being a certain way, to be goal-oriented and goal-driven and structured and formal and action and action and action and action. There's just not a lot of space in the world, and still not very much even with my understanding of this world now. There's not a lot of this acceptance of how does a woman flow within this kind of world? How do we make this world less like that patriarchal, or very, let's not say patriarchal, masculine, very masculine drive? And how do we bring it back to a little bit being more in flow? And it does come back to first understanding your own flow, knowing your cycle, seeing how you cycle in and out of things, instead of always trying to be on top of everything, always with the positive energy, always trying to achieve, always trying to produce, and blah, 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 So
Yeah, first know thyself. First know thyself. Yeah, definitely. This is why I feel so strongly that, this has to be done in a network of people together, because even you, with all your awareness, you can just zoom past these important parts, because life takes over these hardcore systems and structures which are necessary to be the banks of the river, so that we can flow, life can flow in the speed that it's going. But for us to just create like an island in that river to climb on and just rest before we jump back into it, I definitely feel that this reminder is important on an ongoing basis from our peers to rest. I mean, it's not good to say, but I love that you're experiencing this personally, so that you can remember literally and hear that, the things that I've learned also. It's only a couple of months I've been working with this as a full-time thing. And so also that 9-month embodiment, I'm still going through navigating on month about 3 now. Okay, so I'm in my autumn, I want my hoodie on and I want to be cozy and I don't want to push myself too hard, but I have deadlines, and I'm in the middle of a launch and I've got things going out, and it's just like, if I don't take care of me first, I'm not going to be giving the best of myself out, and of course we want to steamroll that all the time, because I guess because we've got bills to pay and things like that.
yeah.
But yeah,
And also because that is the habit, right? That is a very reinforced way of being, and we've become a little bit disconnected from that sort of, again, that ancient wisdom, that more inherent woman's wisdom, with the strive towards a different kind of society. It's kind of finding again that balance. How do you find the balance? It's not about like not having the structure that you need from that masculine perspective, but it is about finding how to also bring in more of, and make space and allow space for, on the greater
and
scale.
isn't that masculine? Isn't this structure by honoring our flow. Like that is the structure. We've been given the structure to flow within. We're just not even aware of it
Mm, mm,
or tuned into it. But within communities and networks, we definitely can be constantly upholding that as a new template for other people as well. Once we've nailed it, we've done it before, Tony, we can do it again.
yeah. I mean, I definitely find that when I've kind of get out of touch with and the circles, the red tent, the circle that we would come together in was very, very I mean, I remember the first, it just was so revelationary for me because there was all sorts of things in terms of my cycle and shame and all of the things that things I didn't even realize there were about all of that. That the red tent space gave me, like you say, that voice. You said being witnessed and heard and held. It's not a conversation that you have with your girlfriends where we all trying to get our bit in and share in the conversation. Although a red tent has, or that kind of a sharing circle has, everyone's getting a chance to say their thing, it's not the same as a conversation. Conversation is a back and forth. We give and we take, we add, we think sometimes we just dying to say our own thing. We don't even listen to what someone else is saying. But the circle really held space for being completely witnessed in whatever you're experiencing and not trying to fix it, not trying to change it, not trying to, oh, shame, lovey, give you a hug. And not that we don't give each other hugs and love and what have you, but it wasn't about that. It was about just letting you express what you really need to express so that you can actually start to get deep inside and express what's really underneath everything. Like you said, that deeper layer, the deeper stuff, instead of just the superficial, oh yeah, life's a bit shit and my partner's like this and, you know, I feel like that. And then also giving us space for that release so that it's not necessary to always go home and then like, fuck, I'm still back at that same place again, still feel shit. Okay, yeah, I chatted for 2 hours with my girlfriends. We had lots of wine, but actually, what did it really do? There's no release. And so then what do we do is like numb it with something else, TV or more wine or whatever else, you know? So that was revelatory for me again to come into really that space of being witnessed and held. And then now, how do I do that? How can I then offer that to other people? Can I, if I am hearing myself more, then it's easier for me. I'm more prepared. Can't find the word. What's the word? I can then offer that to someone else because it's been offered.
Yeah.
It's like almost like a, not paying it forward, but it is like a paying it forward. You know, if I can give someone else that space and they really feel held and they really feel like they can offload and work through the deepest stuff in their soul, then well, then we all do better because we actually
Definitely. Yeah, I love that meme that goes around, you know, we rise by lifting others. I hear you, you know, once I've embodied the wisdom, and that word is thrown around so much to the point where we don't even want to hear it anymore. But once I've experienced the magic of conscious cycling, of being aware of my cycle as it approaches and as I go through it, and I come out on the other side more more sure of who I am because of that process. And I keep doing that and I keep doing that, and I get stronger in my sense of self and stronger in my sense of community. Then of course I want this for other women too, because I'm not in it just for myself, I'm in it for you.
mm,
Like, who am I without you?
mm.
Really,
And then
really.
that whole thing about competitiveness, that like as women, how do we
Woo!
do that? Like that competing against someone else, or they're better than me, or they've done this, and I must now try and also do that. You know, hopefully that starts to go away. I still struggle
Yeah,
a lot.
I see it. I see it a lot with my daughters now. 14, she's just started high school. We're in a new city. You know, the girls are really clicky. They've been together since they were young, and she's quite shy as well, my child. So, you know, I'm watching these maidens just meet each other in fear. really is what's happening. They're not meeting each other in love because this goes way back in history. I'm not going to go too much into it,
But I was going to say, this is inherited stuff as well, right? How we behave and how we respond, and this fear response to, people and other people, and fear of ourselves. And because we don't, again, you fearful
goes
of stuff
way
you
back
don't
to the
know.
burning times,
Yeah,
like
but if you don't even know
literally.
yourself, of course, there's a lot of fear of someone else and what they might be or bring, or,
Right? If you don't know yourself, you are going to meet everyone with a level of guardedness. Yeah. So the beauty that I've seen in that regard is that as soon as women come into a soft space where they can unfold after a while, maybe the first one or two times they're a bit skeptical of what is the space, but once they start to see the level of trust, the level of love, the level of being held, the level of security and safety, and all these beautiful things, they've never encountered that in their life. And as soon as they start to encounter that, they start to witness women in all their beauty. And that's all they see. And then you take that out into the world with you. So then when you do come across women that are still competing, you're like, whoa, what is that? And you either approach that with tenderness so that it can transform what it is, or you'll just say, that's not for me. Now that's honoring yourself, right? And honoring the other person as well. But yeah, there are other levels of that, even within these spaces. That programming runs so deep, of women needing to compete with each other. Definitely, I know I've had levels of that within me, that just more layers keep coming off and keep coming off. There's definitely a time when I was first holding these spaces, and I was this young, very cool 35, 6-year-old who suddenly had hundreds and thousands of women like interested in this thing, and and it became all about me, for my young mind. And to watch how that then does start to rise up as a competitive edge, even still with all this knowledge and all this wisdom about women competing with each other, how you watch your own wounds still deep under there, rubbing up against yourself, and then against anybody else who comes into contact with that. These layers are deep, deep, deep. And again, the more love and the more tenderness that can be offered in the face of all these things within ourselves that we don't like, and we don't know where it's coming from and why it's there, the more it can be met with love, the more it can be met with just compassion, which is what these spaces offer, the more you can meet yourself with that compassion, with that love, with that sense of security, and go out and offer it again. Yeah, you learn what you need to know to evolve into the best version of yourself, for sure, in the red tent.
Well, and I suppose there's a metaphor for life as well, right? So life is a red tent, actually. Well, if you're aware of like the process, right?
For sure. Yeah.
I'm just keeping a little eye on the time. I think there's lots to still talk about. Like, I really want to do also touch on how you got here, like what was your path to get here, because that's really what I also want to share, is other people's experience, their experience, and how they get to the places they get to what they're offering and what they're working with. But I think we need a whole nother hour of conversation for that, because I know you've got a call coming up. So I don't know if we leave things just as they are for now and do a follow-up call, and maybe we can talk a little more about some other things and more where you're going now in your business, if you want to.
Whatever you wish to do is fine by me. I'm happy to keep chatting with you, Tony, for ages.
Well,
In future, yeah,
no,
definitely.
I can sit for a couple of hours and chat. And I mean, I also love this stuff. It's very rich when you start delving into it, and very, and like you say, there's such beauty in there. I remember just one of my experiences from the red tent also led to, we had that one red tent, which was also encompassed, we did with Carrie Weavand of, well, she's not indie yoga anymore, but, and we did the naked yoga as part of the red tent.
Wow,
And that
memories.
was an absolute, it was the most amazing experience for me. I'm going to cry. Because it was such a beautiful experience to actually see other women in their nakedness, and to not be in that competitive mind space, to actually be so like, wow, and I am okay the way that I am. So clearly, lots there. It was really beautiful. I think for a lot of people, when they hear naked yoga, the first thing they like is like, ugh, or, you know, it like brings up so much resistance and so much all that nakedness, like what, you know, the sexual side of things and how must that be? And, you know, it was, but obviously I'd done quite a lot of work in preparation for that, and eventually then attended that particular yoga session, red tent / yoga session. And so I was ready to be in that space, a little more vulnerable and more open. And I mean, Carrie held a beautiful space as well, the way in which she did it, the way she taught it. I mean, we weren't all like facing each other naked right from the beginning. We were facing away from each other in our own little space, and slowly came to be facing inwards in circle. And so it was just hugely transformative for me.
What a
So
beautiful walk down memory lane, Tony. We've done so much together, actually. You know,
wow.
I'm also feeling a bit emotional as you talk about that. I'll also never forget that. For me, what I remember that stands out the most from that space was how putting on our clothes at the end was the mask.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, actually, once you had spent an hour unmasked with women and in your softness and in your flow and in your vulnerability and moving past all the difficult thoughts that you might be having, and you finally just settled into your breath and settled into presence of your sisters and mothers and aunts next to you, that getting up to put on your clothes felt like sin. That
Well,
was the
none of us were,
mask.
quite a
That's
lot
the
of us
real.
weren't, didn't want to. We actually spent quite a bit of time still chatting afterwards, just like having like a conversation like this, except we were naked, you know, and just having like and it wasn't a problem. It wasn't an issue, you know. I think there were still some ladies who were obviously still, you know, were maybe a little less, a little further back in their journey. And so it was still quite a scary thing for them. And, you know, but I remember myself, I was like, oh, I could just sit here for the rest of the night and have a chat, carry on chatting and being quite exactly unmasked for a change, seen, witnessed, seen and heard in a way that's like, it's actually the way. It is the way. We've come so far away from that way of being. That's like actually who we are really, you know, as human beings, not even just as women, really. So yeah, beautiful. So I would just like to say I'm incredibly grateful for what you started, you know, even if you were in your young and competitive mind space, there was something obviously that drove you to start something that's really affected, I don't think only me, I think many other women in South Africa have never been exposed to myself in that way. You know, I'd been hidden from myself for so many years. And I think, so 2016, what's that, 9 years ago? So let's say 10 years ago. I mean, I was in my like late 30s. And I'm nearly 50. I'm almost being the crone now. I'm always turning to the crone I've always looked for, the wisdom keepers I've always looked for, you know. So that's been an amazing journey. And I'm like very grateful to you for having introduced that to a whole bunch of women so that we can start to actually work in a constructive way to change things, to find our flow, to work, you know, along. And also that journey, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation that I think we all went through, that like fight with the patriarchy. And then eventually that path into realizing actually It's not us against them. It's like, how do we find the balance and that flow between our own masculine and feminine, between both?
Yes. Oh wow, that was another circle. Wow.
We'll talk about
That
that
was
more.
amazing. That was like such strong, wise women in that circle. I'll never forget that one ever. Yeah. It was a journey into finding our masculine within instead of looking without. Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm equally as grateful, Tony, for the women like you that were there in that whole journey. When I say who am I without you? I'm nothing without you. I really, really, really mean that. I've had a lot of time and a lot of space to be with myself, and what has all this meant ultimately? What does it mean? What are we doing? And literally, I am because you are. So I owe everything to you also. Thank you.
Yeah. I think it is amazing when we can start to see life like that. And maybe that is something that's also age appropriate. As you start to get into your older years, it is a part of maturing, really understanding that, So anyway, let's end here for now, and we'll have another conversation because I think there's, like I say, lots to talk about.
Part 1, part 2, part 3, we do a trilogy.
Exactly. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you making the time, and sending you lots of love. We'll chat again soon.
Thank you.